The emergency beacon screamed across the darkness of space, its signal desperate and pleading. Ambassador stood in the communications room of the human embassy on Prime, watching the holographic display flicker with incoming data. The message was clear and terrifying. They were coming, and they were bringing everything they had. High Counselor appeared on the screen before her. The alien leader's face was pale, his multiple eyes blinking rapidly in what had learned was a sign of extreme stress. Behind him, she could see other officials rushing back and forth, their movements frantic and uncoordinated. Ambassador said, his voice trembling, "We are invoking the Mutual Defense Treaty. The Dominion has broken through our outer defenses. They will reach our within 3 planetary rotations. We need help. We need it now." Felt her stomach tighten. She had been on Prime for only 8 months, sent to establish diplomatic relations after first contact 3 years ago. There were peaceful traders, a confederation of species that believed in commerce and cooperation. They had no standing army to speak of, only defense forces meant to protect against pirates and raiders. The Dominion was something else entirely. "How many ships?" asked, keeping her voice calm despite the ice forming in her chest. 800 warships, replied. "We have called our allies, all of them. The Republic, the Alliance, the Coalition. None have answered. They say they are too powerful, that sending forces would be suicide. You are our last hope, Ambassador. If humanity cannot help us, then we are lost." Straightened her shoulders. "Give me 10 minutes, High Counselor. I will contact Earth immediately." The screen went dark and turned to her staff. "Get me Earth command. Priority Alpha authorization. Encryption level maximum." The connection took 4 minutes to establish, routing through quantum relays and secure channels across light years of space. When the face of Admiral appeared on the screen, felt a wave of relief. The Admiral was old by military standards, his hair silver and his face lined with decades of experience. But his eyes were sharp and alert. "Ambassador said, we received your emergency flag. What's the situation?" "Didn't waste time. They are invoking the defense treaty, sir. The Dominion is attacking with 800 warships. They've broken through the outer perimeter. They have 3 days at most before they reach there. All their other allies have refused to help." Was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming on his desk. Behind him, could see other officers moving quickly, responding to alerts. The Admiral must have already put Earth Command on standby the moment her emergency flag came through. 800 ships, said slowly. "That's a full invasion force. They don't play around." He looked directly at through the screen. "Tell them that help is coming. The 3rd Expeditionary Fleet will deploy immediately. We'll be there in 36 hours. "Sir," said carefully, "they are expecting maybe a token force, a show of support. They don't understand human military protocols. Should I prepare them for—" "Prepare them for a fleet, Ambassador," interrupted gently. "We signed a mutual defense treaty. When Earth signs something like that, we mean it. If they are being invaded, we respond with appropriate force. I'm bringing 300 ships and everything that comes with them." Blinked. 300 ships, sir, the might. "Be grateful," finished. "I know first contact protocols are delicate, Ambassador, but this isn't a diplomatic negotiation. This is war, the called for help. We're coming with enough force to make a difference. Out." The screen went dark again and stood in silence for a moment. 300 warships. The entire defense force numbered perhaps 50 vessels, and those were barely armed compared to military standards. She had seen the human fleet once during a demonstration after the treaty signing. One human carrier group had more firepower than most small nations in the galaxy. She contacted again. The High Counselor appeared immediately, his face hopeful but exhausted. "High Counselor said, choosing her words carefully. "Earth has responded. Admiral is deploying the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. They will arrive in approximately 36 hours. His face showed visible relief. "Thank the ancestors. Even a small force from humanity will show that we are not alone. How many ships is Admiral sending? 20, 30. We understand if humanity cannot spare more on such short notice. Took a breath. 300 warships, High Counselor, led by 5 carrier groups. The silence that followed was absolute. Eyes went wide, all 6 of them focusing on with an intensity she had never seen before. 300, whispered. Ambassador, did you say 300? Yes, High Counselor. Admiral is bringing the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet in full strength. He considered the threat level appropriate for a full response. Seemed to struggle with this information. Ambassador, I must be clear. They have 800 ships. Your Admiral is bringing less than half that number. Perhaps there has been a misunderstanding. We called for support, for backup. We did not expect humanity to commit to a major battle. If your forces need to wait for reinforcements. High Counselor said gently, I assure you that Admiral understands the situation completely. 300 ships is what he determined necessary. The Admiral does not make decisions lightly. But the numbers, protested. They outnumber your fleet more than 2 to 1. This is not a small pirate raid, Ambassador. This is the Dominion. They have conquered 17 systems in the last decade. Their warriors are legendary. Their ships are among the most powerful in known space. Remembered something Admiral had told her during her briefing before taking the ambassador position. High Counselor, humanity has a saying. It's not about the size of the dog in the fight, but the size of the fight in the dog. Looked confused. I do not understand this saying, Ambassador. You will, said quietly. Trust me, High Counselor. When the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet arrives, you will understand. After the call ended, walked to the window of her embassy office. Outside, she could see the capital city stretching toward the horizon. Beautiful spires and floating platforms, market districts where hundreds of species traded freely. It was peaceful and prosperous, everything that civilized society should be. In 3 days, they would be here to destroy it all. But in 36 hours, Admiral would arrive first. Smiled slightly, though there was no humor in it. The thought they had called for backup. They had no idea what was actually coming. Humanity didn't do backup. Humanity did overwhelming force. They were about to learn the difference, and more importantly, so were the... She touched the window glass, feeling its cool surface against her palm. Hold on, she whispered to the city below. Help is coming, real help. In the darkness of space, the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet was already moving, 300 warships preparing to jump across light years. At their head, Admiral sat in his command chair, reviewing tactical data about the Dominion. The galaxy was about to learn something new about humanity. When humans made promises, they kept them. And when humans went to war, they went to win. The sensors on Prime detected the jump signatures 37 hours after Ambassador's call to Earth. High Counselor rushed to the Orbital Defense Command Center, his heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. The human fleet had arrived, but so had the enemy was now only 2 days away from close enough that their long-range scanners could detect them clearly. Captain stood on the bridge of the carrier Indomitable, watching the system materialize on the main display. Around his ship, the rest of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 300 warships, organized into 5 carrier groups, each one a symphony of military precision. All ships reporting in, Captain, said from the communications station. No casualties from the jump, all systems nominal. Admiral sends his compliments and requests you join the command conference in 10 minutes. Nodded, his eyes scanning the tactical display. The defense fleet was clustered around there, 50 small vessels that looked fragile compared to the massive formation approaching from the outer system. The fleet was spread across a wide area, clearly confident in their numerical superiority. Commander said to his tactical officer, what do you make of the formation? Studied his screens, his fingers dancing across controls. They're using a standard hammer and anvil approach, Captain. Main battle group advancing directly while two flanking formations attempt to envelop the positions. It's textbook strategy for overwhelming a weaker opponent. Effective but predictable. Numbers asked. 812 ships confirmed, replied. Various classes. Their heaviest units are in the center formation. Estimate they'll be in weapons range of prime in 48 hours at current speed. Allowed himself a slight smile. Plenty of time then. On prime, watched his screens with growing confusion. The human fleet hadn't just arrived. They had materialized in perfect military formation, their ships spread across strategic positions that covered multiple approach vectors to the planet. The formations were complex and clearly practiced, nothing like the loose clusters that most galactic species used when traveling together. "Get me Ambassador," ordered, "and connect me to the human fleet commander." Within minutes, two screens appeared before him. On one, Ambassador stood in her embassy office. On the other, an older human male in a crisp military uniform looked at him with calm, evaluating eyes. "High Counselor," the human said. "I am Admiral, Commander of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. We received your distress call and have arrived to render assistance per the terms of our mutual defense treaty." Admiral said, trying to keep the tremor from his voice, "We are grateful beyond words that humanity has honored our treaty. However, I must express concern about the tactical situation. Our sensors show they have more than 800 warships. Your fleet, while impressive, numbers only 300. Perhaps we should discuss defensive strategies and consider calling for additional reinforcements from Earth." Admiral's expression didn't change. "High Counselor, the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet is fully capable of handling the current threat. We do have the 7th Fleet on standby if needed, but I don't anticipate requiring additional assets." Felt his blood run cold. The human admiral sounded confident, almost casual, as if he were discussing routine patrol duties rather than facing an invasion force that had crushed every opponent it had encountered for decades. "Admiral, perhaps there has been a miscommunication," said carefully. "The Dominion is not like the pirates or raiders that plague the trade routes. They are a warrior species with centuries of military tradition. Their ships are heavily armed and shielded. They outnumber your forces significantly. I do not wish to seem ungrateful, but I fear we may have given you an incomplete picture of the danger." "High Counselor," Admiral said patiently, "I have reviewed all available intelligence on the Dominion. Their ships, their tactics, their history. I am fully aware of what we're facing. The 3rd Fleet is more than adequate for this engagement." On the other screen, Ambassador cleared her throat. "High Counselor, if I may, human military doctrine differs significantly from galactic standard. Admiral has decades of experience, and if he says his fleet can handle the situation, I would trust his judgment." Wanted to argue but found himself at a loss. The humans seemed completely unconcerned about the numerical disadvantage. Either they were foolishly overconfident, or they knew something he didn't. Aboard the Indomitable, Captain joined the fleet-wide command conference. Screens showed the faces of the other carrier group commanders and their staff. Admiral stood at the center of his own bridge, a large tactical display showing the entire system behind him. "Situation assessment," began without preamble. "They have committed their full invasion force. They expect to overwhelm through sheer numbers and intimidation. Standard galactic warfare doctrine suggests they'll demand surrender once they reach orbital range. If refused, they'll commence planetary bombardment to force submission." "Do we know if they're aware of our arrival?" asked one of the other captains. "They know," replied. "Their long-range sensors are primitive by our standards but functional. They've had time to detect our jump signatures. Current intelligence suggests they're debating their response." Studied the formation on his own screens. They're not changing course or formation, Admiral. They're still advancing on Prime as if we're not here. Which means they're either very stupid or very arrogant, said Commander from his station. My money is on arrogant. They've won every engagement for decades. They probably think we're another minor power that will flee once they demonstrate force. Admiral nodded. Agreed, which gives us an advantage. Lieutenant status on fighter squadrons. From the Indomitable's flight deck, his voice came through clearly. All squadrons ready for deployment, Admiral. Pilots are briefed and eager. We've been running simulations based on the ship specifications. Their point defense systems are extensive but optimized for larger targets. Our fighters should be able to exploit gaps in their coverage. Excellent, said. Captain, you'll command the carrier operations. I want continuous fighter coverage once we engage. Standard doctrine. Disable their engines and weapons first, then offer surrender terms. We're here to stop an invasion, not commit genocide. Understood, Admiral, replied. Listening to the human communications channel with permission from Ambassador, felt his confusion deepen. The humans were discussing fighter operations and targeting priorities as if the battle were already won. They showed no fear, no hesitation, no doubt. They spoke about disabling hundreds of enemy warships the way merchants discussed loading cargo. Ambassador, said privately to, I do not understand. The Admiral speaks as though victory is certain. Does he not grasp the danger? They have never been defeated in open battle. Their warriors are fierce and their weapons devastating. Is this human pride, or do they truly possess some advantage I cannot see? Was quiet for a moment before responding. High Counselor, humanity has been at war for most of its history. We've fought ourselves, our environment, our own nature. For thousands of years, we refined the art of warfare because we had no choice. When we finally reached space, we brought all that knowledge with us. She paused. They may have never been defeated, but they've also never fought humans. That's about to change. On his bridge, Admiral finished the conference. All units are to maintain defensive positions around Prime. I'm sending a message to the commander now. Let's see if we can resolve this peacefully. The message was brief and direct. To the commanding officer of the invasion force. This is Admiral of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are ordered to leave space immediately. The Confederation is under the protection of humanity. Any hostile action against assets will be considered an act of war against Earth. You have 12 hours to begin your withdrawal. Respond within 1 hour to acknowledge. Across the system, aboard the flagship, War Leader read the human message and laughed. His bridge crew joined in, the sound of their mockery echoing through the command center. A human fleet half the size of his force was ordering him to retreat. These humans were clearly ignorant of galactic military realities. Composed his response with amusement. To the human admiral, your ignorance is entertaining. Withdraw your token fleet immediately or we will destroy you along with The Dominion has conquered 17 systems. Your little Earth will make 18. You have 1 hour to flee. This is your only warning. When Admiral received the reply, he read it twice and then handed it to Captain. Well, said calmly, we tried diplomacy. Battle stations all ships. Let's teach the why you don't threaten Earth or her allies. Returned to his command chair, his face set. Around him, the Indomitable came to full combat readiness. Across the fleet, 300 warships prepared for battle. The watched and prayed, the laughed and advanced, and humanity got ready to show the galaxy what real warfare looked like. War Leader stood on his command bridge, watching the human fleet hold position near Prime. The 1 hour deadline had passed, and the humans had not withdrawn. Instead, their ships remained in defensive formation, seemingly content to wait for the inevitable. Analysis, commanded his tactical officer. The human ships are smaller than our battleships but larger than our destroyers, the officer reported. Their formation is unusual. They keep significant spacing between vessels, and there are 5 very large ships at the center of their groups. We believe these are command vessels or perhaps mobile space stations. Weapons asked. Unknown, war leader. Their hulls show no visible weapon ports like standard galactic designs. Scanning suggests heavy armor and unusual power signatures, but we cannot determine their offensive capabilities from this range. Nodded slowly. The humans were keeping their secrets, which showed at least some tactical awareness. But it didn't matter. Numbers won wars, and had the numbers. He had 800 ships against 300. The mathematics were simple and brutal. Send forward Battle Group 7, ordered. 200 ships. If the humans do not flee when they see our strength, destroy them. Let the watch their so-called allies burn. 200 warships broke from the main formation and advanced toward the human fleet. Each vessel was massive, bristling with weapons, and protected by shields that had withstood everything the galaxy could throw at them. The crews were confident, eager for another easy victory to add to their legacy. On Prime, High Counselor watched the display with horror. "They're sending 200 ships," he whispered. "Against 300, the humans might have had a chance, but 200 is still a formidable force. If the humans lose even half their fleet in this first engagement." Ambassador stood beside him, her face calm but her eyes intense. "Watch, High Counselor, just watch." Aboard the Indomitable, Captain received the tactical update from Commander. Enemy force approaching. 200 contacts. They're not even trying to hide their intentions, Captain. Standard battle line formation, maximum intimidation. Said into the communication system, "Launch all fighters. Time to work." On the Indomitable's flight deck, sat in her cockpit as the launch bay doors opened to reveal space beyond. Around her, hundreds of other fighters were launching from all 5 carrier groups. The human pilots ran through their pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency, their hands steady and their minds focused. "All wings this is," she said over the squadron channel. "Remember the simulations. Point defense is heavy but slow to track. Standard attack pattern, approach at maximum speed, break into pairs at 5,000 meters, hit engines and weapon systems. We're not trying to destroy them, we're trying to disable them. Let's show these aliens how Earth does air superiority." The fighters launched, hundreds of small craft screaming into space at velocities that would have been suicidal for galactic designs. Human pilots endured crushing G-forces that their enhanced suits and training allowed them to handle. They moved like a swarm, coordinated by AI-assisted targeting systems that made them function as one entity rather than individual units. They watched the fighter launch with confusion. Fighters were used for reconnaissance or harassing damaged ships in galactic warfare, not as primary attack craft. The small size made them easy targets, and their weapons were too light to threaten capital ships. War Leader almost laughed when he saw the humans launching what looked like their entire fighter complement. "Ignore the small craft," ordered. "Focus fire on the capital ships. Once the humans see their main fleet threatened, they'll recall their toys." The battle group opened fire at maximum range. Massive energy beams and explosive projectiles filled space between the 2 fleets. It was an impressive display. Centuries of military engineering concentrated into a single volley meant to shatter enemy morale before close combat even began. Captain watched the incoming fire on his displays. Point defense active. Helm, evasive pattern delta. All ships coordinate per Combat Protocol 7. The human fleet reacted with speed that shocked the observers. The ships didn't just move to avoid fire, they danced. Each vessel executed precise movements that kept them clear of the worst of the barrage while maintaining fleet formation. Their point defense systems, using rapid fire and laser interceptors, destroyed or deflected incoming projectiles with 98% accuracy. Not a single human ship was hit in the first volley. Commander smiled coldly. "Weapons are powerful but slow. Their targeting systems are decades behind ours. They're used to enemies who rely on shields and armor to tank damage. They don't know how to fight opponents who simply don't get hit. Return fire, ordered. You have weapons free. The weapons officer, had been waiting for this moment. His fingers flew across his console, and the Indomitables came alive. Unlike the visible energy beams and missiles they used, projectiles were nearly invisible, moving at relativistic speeds. The first ship to be hit didn't even have time to register the impact before its shields collapsed, and its hull was torn open by a tungsten rod moving at a significant fraction of light speed. Across the human fleet, the response was coordinated and devastating. 300 ships opened fire simultaneously, their weapons guided by quantum computers that calculated trajectories faster than any biological mind could process. The battle group, designed to absorb and dish out punishment in traditional slugging matches, had never faced opponents who could simply shoot faster and more accurately than they could react. Fighter wing hit the formation seconds after the capital ships opened fire. The human fighters moved through point defense like it wasn't even there, too fast and too agile for the older tracking systems to follow. Personally disabled 3 engines in her first attack run, her plasma cannons cutting through armor with surgical precision. All wings, targets of opportunity, called out. Focus on propulsion and weapons. Let's leave them floating and helpless. The battle group started to fall apart. Ships lost power, their engines destroyed by fighter attacks. Others found their weapon systems disabled by precise fire from the human capital ships. A few commanders tried to ram the human vessels in desperate last-resort attacks, but the human ships simply moved out of the way with contemptuous ease. War Leader watched in disbelief as his battle group was systematically dismantled. His tactical officer was screaming numbers at him, but they didn't make sense. 200 ships reduced to less than 50 functional vessels in under 10 minutes. It was impossible. They had the advantage in numbers, size, and firepower. How were they losing? Their weapons, the tactical officer finally managed to explain. They're faster than anything we've ever seen. Their targeting is perfect. Our shields might as well not exist against those projectiles. And their fighters, War Leader. They move like nothing we've encountered. Our point defense can't track them. Enough, roared. Full retreat. Get those ships back to the main fleet. Of the 200 ships that attacked, 17 made it back. The rest were either destroyed or disabled, drifting in space with their crews trapped aboard. Not a single human ship had been lost. Human casualties numbered 4 pilots whose fighters took damage and had to return for repairs, and 1 injury from a crewman who moved too fast during combat maneuvers and sprained his ankle. High Counselor stood frozen, staring at the tactical display. Ambassador put a hand on his shoulder gently. "Do you understand now?" asked quietly. "This is why Admiral wasn't concerned about the numbers." Couldn't speak. He had just watched 200 warships, vessels that had terrorized the galaxy for decades, get destroyed or crippled in 11 minutes. 11 minutes. And the humans had made it look easy. Captain reviewed the battle damage reports. Minimal ammunition expenditure. All fighters recovered. 2 ships report minor damage from debris. No casualties beyond minor injuries. Commander, analysis. They rely on brute force and intimidation, replied. Their technology is adequate by galactic standards but primitive compared to Earth. Their tactics assume their opponents will engage in traditional slugging matches. They have no doctrine for dealing with high-speed precision strikes. Frankly, Captain, this wasn't a battle. This was target practice. Admiral's face appeared on screen. Good work, Captain. Minimal damage to our forces, maximum effect on the enemy. Send a message to War Leader. Give him another chance to withdraw. Let's see if he's smart enough to take it. The message was simple. War Leader, you have seen what the Earth Defense Fleet can do. This is your final warning. Leave space immediately or we will destroy your entire invasion force. We do not want to kill you, but we will if you force us to. You have 6 hours to begin your withdrawal. Aboard his flagship, read the message with shaking hands. Around him, his bridge crew was silent, their earlier confidence shattered. The humans had destroyed a quarter of his force in minutes, and they were offering mercy. The humiliation burned, but the tactical reality was clear. The humans weren't just strong. They were overwhelmingly superior in every way that mattered. Their ships were faster, their weapons more accurate, their tactics more refined. And they had held back, could see it in the battle data. The human fleet had barely used a fraction of its capabilities. He had two choices: retreat in disgrace or die with honor in a battle he couldn't possibly win. Looked at his remaining ships, at the thousands of warriors who served under his command. For all his pride, he was not a fool. There was no honor in leading them to pointless death. But war leader was also, and the had never retreated in living memory. He could not be the first. "Prepare the fleet for battle," ordered, his voice heavy. "All ships will advance on the human positions. We will show them what warriors are capable of." His tactical officer looked at him in horror. "War leader, that's suicide." "Yes," said quietly, "but it is our duty." Admiral watched the fleet begin its advance and felt a moment of genuine sadness. The enemy commander had chosen pride over survival. It was a decision understood, even respected, but it was still a waste of lives. "They're not retreating," Captain reported from the Indomitable. "All remaining ships are forming up for a full assault. They're committing everything they have left." 600 ships against our 300, Commander observed. "Still 2-to-1 odds. They must think numbers will matter." Shook his head slowly. "Numbers always matter in warfare, Commander, but technology, training, and tactics matter more. They are brave, I'll give them that, but bravery doesn't stop fire." He opened the fleet-wide channel. "All ships, battle stations. Rules of engagement remain the same. Disable where possible, destroy only when necessary. Let's end this quickly and with minimal casualties on both sides." The fleet came in 3 massive waves, war leader directing them in a hammer-blow strategy meant to overwhelm through sheer mass. 200 ships in the first wave, 200 in the second, and 200 held in reserve. It was this ultimate battle formation, used to crush every opponent they had ever faced. Captain studied the approach vectors on his tactical display. "They're learning," he noted. "This formation is more sophisticated than their first attack. They're trying to force us into a position where we can't use our mobility advantage." "Won't work," his voice came through from the flight deck. "Sir, request permission to deploy fighters for harassment runs. We can break up their formations before they reach optimal firing range." "Granted," replied, "but stay clear of their main guns. I don't want any heroics today." "No promises, Captain," said with a slight laugh, and her fighter launched into space again. The human fighters hit the first wave like angry hornets, darting between the massive warships and targeting critical systems. They had adjusted their point defense, but human pilots were adaptive too. Led her squadron through a gap in the coverage, her plasma cannons burning through sensor arrays and communication relays. "All wings focus on communications," ordered. "Blind them and they can't coordinate. Make them fight as individuals instead of a fleet." It was classic human doctrine. Disrupt enemy command and control, turn organized resistance into chaos. The ships began losing contact with each other, their formation falling apart as individual captains made their own decisions without central coordination. The human capital ships opened fire at maximum effective range. Unlike the energy weapons that lost power over distance, human were just as deadly at long range as short range. Physics didn't care about distance, only velocity, and the human weapons achieved velocities that made them nearly unstoppable. Minyu coordinated the Indomitable's weapons fire with cold precision. Each shot was calculated by the ship's AI, predicted based on target movement, environmental factors, and probability calculations that ran millions of scenarios per second. The result was that nearly every shot hit exactly where it was intended. A battleship exploded as a round punched through its reactor core. Another lost its entire propulsion system and began drifting helplessly. A third tried to return fire, but its targeting systems had been destroyed by fighter attacks, and its shots went wide. War Leader watched his first wave crumble before it even reached effective range. His second wave was already committed, but he could see how this would end. The humans weren't just winning. They were destroying his fleet without taking meaningful damage themselves. "Report casualties," demanded. His tactical officer's voice was hollow. "First wave is at 40% combat effective and falling. We've lost 120 ships destroyed or disabled. Enemy casualties: 0 ships lost, minor damage to 3 vessels, 2 fighters damaged." The numbers were impossible, but couldn't deny what his sensors were telling him. In traditional galactic warfare, battles were grinding affairs where both sides took heavy losses. But the humans weren't fighting by galactic rules. They fought like nothing had ever encountered. "Second wave will reach engagement range in 3 minutes, the tactical officer continued. "War Leader, we must consider." "No," interrupted. "We do not retreat. If we die today, we die with honor." But even as he spoke, felt doubt. Was there honor in leading his warriors to pointless death? Was there honor in refusing to recognize when you were completely outmatched? The second wave fared no better than the first. The human fleet had now fully assessed capabilities and adapted their tactics accordingly. They moved in coordinated patterns that kept them out of effective weapons range, while their own weapons had no such limitations. It was like watching a predator toy with prey. High Counselor had stopped trying to understand what he was seeing. The numbers on his display made no sense. The Dominion, the terror of the border regions, was being systematically destroyed by a force half their size, and the humans were doing it almost casually, with minimal effort and no apparent concern. "How?" asked Ambassador. "How is this possible?" Watched the battle with sad eyes. "Humanity spent thousands of years fighting itself, High Counselor. We perfected warfare because we had no choice. When we reached space, we brought all that knowledge with us. They are warriors, yes, but humans are survivors. There's a difference." Admiral made a decision. "Open a direct channel to the flagship. It's time to end this." Moments later, War Leader's screen lit up with the human admiral's face. Spoke with no anger, no mockery, just tired authority. War Leader said, "You are a brave commander and your warriors fight with honor, but this battle is over. You have lost 400 ships. I have lost none. If you continue this attack, I will be forced to destroy your entire fleet. There is no shame in recognizing superior force. Surrender now, and your surviving crews will be treated with respect and returned to space. Continue fighting and they will die for nothing. The choice is yours." Felt rage and humiliation warring in his chest. The human admiral was offering mercy, which somehow made it worse. But as he looked at his tactical display, at the wreckage of his once mighty fleet, he knew the truth. There was no path to victory here. There never had been. "If I surrender," said slowly, "what terms will you demand?" "Complete withdrawal from space," replied immediately. "Immediate cessation of all hostile actions. Your damaged ships will be towed to a neutral location and repaired enough to make the journey home. Your weapons will be temporarily disabled to ensure compliance. Once you reach space, you will be free to go. Earth has no interest in conquering or humiliating your people, War Leader. We just want you to leave our allies alone." Was silent for a long moment. Around his bridge, his officers watched him with desperate hope. They wanted to live. They wanted to go home. But they also needed their war leader to make the decision so they wouldn't have to bear that burden. "You could destroy us easily," said. "Why offer mercy?" His expression softened slightly. "Because killing is easy, War Leader. Living with it is hard. I've fought enough battles to know that destroying an enemy completely just creates more enemies. But showing mercy, showing strength tempered with restraint, that can create something better." made his choice. I surrender, the fleet will stand down. On my honor, we will comply with your terms. The battle ended not with fire and destruction, but with silence. The ships powered down their weapons and held position. Human vessels moved in carefully, ready to respond if it was a trick, but kept his word. It was over. Captain coordinated the cleanup operations, directing his Marines to secure the disabled vessels. Commander led the boarding parties personally, his armored Marines moving through ships with professional efficiency. The warriors, towering beings bred for combat, watched in shock as human Marines in powered armor treated them with firm respect. Injured were given medical attention. Captured crew were secured but not harmed. The humans moved like they had done this 1,000 times before. Approached an officer in one of the disabled ships. The alien was easily twice his size, but sat slumped in defeat. "My name is Commander," the Marine said through his translator. "You're being taken to a secured area where you'll be given food, water, and medical attention. Once all vessels are secured, you'll be transported to neutral space and released. Do you understand?" The officer looked at him with confused eyes. "You treat prisoners well." Nodded. "The war is over. You're not my enemy anymore. You're just someone who needs help getting home." Back on Prime, High Counselor finally spoke after minutes of stunned silence. They won. In less than a day, humanity defeated the Dominion. Ambassador smiled slightly. "No, High Counselor. Humanity stopped an invasion. There's a difference. If we wanted to defeat the Dominion completely, Admiral would have pursued their retreating ships all the way to their home system. But that's not why we're here. We came to protect an ally, and that's what we did." Turned to look at her. "Your people are terrifying, Ambassador." "Yes," agreed quietly. "We are, but we're also your friends, remember that." 3 weeks after the battle, Ambassador stood before the Galactic Council for the first time in human history. The council chamber was enormous, a circular room with representatives from 200 species arrayed in tiered seating. At the center, a holographic display showed the system and the wreckage of the recent battle. "Ambassador," the council speaker began, "a floating entity whose species humanity had not yet fully understood. The council recognizes Earth and requests explanation for the military action taken in space." Stood calmly, his hands clasped behind his back. He had prepared for this moment carefully, knowing that humanity's actions had shocked the galaxy. The Mutual Defense Treaty between Earth and the Confederation was invoked when the Dominion invaded. Humanity responded as the treaty required. We defended our ally against unprovoked aggression. "With overwhelming force," another representative interjected. This one was from the Republic, one of the species that had refused to help the. "Your fleet destroyed hundreds of ships. They have been a dominant military power for decades. How did a newly spacefaring species achieve such a decisive victory?" Met the representative's eyes steadily. "Earth has been spacefaring for over 200 years. We may be new to this council, but we are not new to space, and we are certainly not new to warfare. Humanity developed its military capabilities through necessity, and we maintain them to protect ourselves and our allies." "But the scale of your response," the speaker pressed. "The requested assistance. You sent 300 warships. Most species would send a token force, a diplomatic gesture. Your actions seem disproportionate." "With respect," replied, "when humanity signs a mutual defense treaty, we honor it fully. Though we're facing an invasion force of 800 ships, a token force would have been meaningless. We sent what was needed to actually protect them. Is that not the purpose of such treaties?" The council chamber filled with murmurs. Different species had different translations running, but the sentiment was clear. Humanity had a very different understanding of military commitments than the rest of the galaxy. On Prime, Captain walked through the reconstructed Defense Command Center with High Counselor. Human engineers had worked alongside technicians to repair the damage from the battle, and they had made improvements in the process. Your people are efficient, observed. These repairs would have taken us months. Your teams completed them in weeks. Nodded. We've had a lot of practice rebuilding after wars, High Counselor. It's one of the skills you develop when your history is as violent as ours. Stopped walking and turned to face the human captain. I must ask something that has troubled me since the battle. Your admiral showed mercy to war leader. After destroying so much of the fleet, after demonstrating such overwhelming superiority, he offered surrender terms instead of complete destruction. Why? Humanity could have eliminated a potential enemy forever. Because, said carefully, humanity learned a hard lesson in our history. When you crush an enemy completely, when you humiliate them and destroy them utterly, you don't eliminate the threat. You create a deeper hatred that lasts generations. But when you defeat someone and then show them mercy, when you treat them with respect even in their defeat, you have a chance to turn an enemy into something else. Maybe not a friend, but at least not someone who will spend the rest of their existence planning revenge. A wise philosophy, said. Though I confess, after seeing what humanity is capable of, I am uncertain whether to feel grateful or terrified. Smiled slightly. Both is probably appropriate, High Counselor. We're dangerous, yes, but we're dangerous to our enemies, not our friends. They are our friends. That won't change. Across the galaxy, the recording of the battle spread through diplomatic channels and public networks. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly found themselves studying human tactics, human technology, and human military doctrine. The footage was analyzed in war colleges and strategy centers on 100 worlds. The consensus was universal. Humanity was a new power in the galaxy, and they were unlike anything encountered before. On Earth, in the Defense Council chambers, Admiral presented his report to the assembled military and civilian leadership. Charts and data filled multiple screens, showing casualty figures, ammunition expenditure, and tactical analysis. Total human casualties, reported, 43 dead, 117 wounded. Most casualties occurred during recovery operations and ship-to-ship boarding actions. Combat casualties were minimal. Casualties are estimated at over 200,000 dead and approximately 500,000 captured. The invasion force has been effectively eliminated as a military threat. And the diplomatic fallout, asked one of the civilian council members. Significant, admitted. The Galactic Council is in emergency session. Multiple species are requesting meetings with Earth diplomats. Some want to establish treaties, others want to understand our capabilities, and a few are clearly afraid of us. As they should be, another military commander said bluntly. We just demonstrated that we can defeat forces 3 times our size with minimal losses. That's going to make people nervous. Which is why, said firmly, we need to be very careful about how we proceed. Humanity isn't seeking to dominate the galaxy. We're not looking to build an empire, but we will protect our interests and our allies. The galaxy needs to understand both parts of that statement. Back at the Galactic Council, Ambassador continued his address. I understand the Council's concerns. Humanity's military capabilities are advanced compared to galactic standard, but let me be clear about our intentions. Earth has no desire for conquest or expansion through force. We seek peaceful cooperation with all species. However, we will defend ourselves and our allies with whatever force is necessary. What about someone asked. You destroyed their invasion force. Will you pursue them to their home system? Will you seek revenge for their attack on your ally? No, said simply. They have been defeated and their leadership has agreed to withdraw from space permanently. As far as Earth is concerned, the matter is settled. We have no interest in further conflict unless we are attacked again. The speaker's form shifted colors, indicating consideration. Ambassador, I must ask, if another species, one perhaps larger or more powerful than were to threaten Earth or its allies, would humanity respond in the same manner? His response was immediate and clear. Yes, absolutely yes. The size or reputation of an enemy doesn't matter to us. If you threaten Earth or our friends, you will face the full response of the Earth Defense Fleet. This is not a threat. This is simply a statement of fact. The council chamber fell silent. It was the most direct military statement ever made in council history, and it came from a species most of them had barely heard of a month ago. High Counselor attended the council session remotely, watching the proceedings with complex emotions. His people were safe, protected by the human treaty, but he also understood that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The old powers, the species that had dominated through military might or economic influence, now had to contend with a new player who didn't follow the old rules. After the session, Ambassador met with privately. The High Counselor looked exhausted, aged by the stress of recent weeks. Your ambassador is direct, said. He makes no effort to soften his words or hide humanity's capabilities. Would you prefer we lied? Asked gently. The galaxy knows what happened in space. Pretending to be weak or harmless wouldn't help anyone. No, agreed. But I fear what comes next. Already, we are receiving communications from dozens of species. Some want to join our defense treaty with Earth. Others warn us that we have aligned ourselves with a dangerous power. The Confederation has existed for centuries through careful neutrality. Now we are at the center of galactic attention, and I am not certain we are prepared for it. Sat down across from him. High Counselor, I won't lie to you. Your life has gotten more complicated. Being allied with humanity means you're protected, but it also means you're involved in whatever conflicts we face. That's the nature of real alliances. They're not just pieces of paper, they're commitments that matter. I know, said quietly, and I am grateful. Without humanity, they would be dead or enslaved right now. But I wonder what we have started. You've started something that should have been started long ago, replied. A galaxy where mutual defense treaties actually mean something, where aggressive species can't just invade weaker ones without consequences, where being peaceful doesn't make you a victim. Is that really so bad? Considered this. No, it is not bad, it is just new and frightening. 6 months later, Captain stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as it patrolled space. The ship had become a semi-permanent presence in the system, a reminder to anyone watching that humanity took its commitment seriously. Turned from her communications station. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the border region. Another species is requesting humanitarian assistance. They say they're facing pirate raids and have heard that Earth honors its agreements. Smiled slightly. Send the transmission to Admiral and Ambassador. Let them make the political decision, but start running logistics on what we'd need if we're asked to help. You think we will be? Asked. I think, said slowly, that the galaxy is learning a new lesson. When you call humanity for help, we actually show up. And when we show up, we bring real support, not token gestures. He looked at the showing, the peaceful, the called for backup. We arrived with a battle fleet. That's just how humanity does things. Commander laughed from his station. I bet next time someone calls for help, they'll be more specific about what they actually want. Maybe, agreed. But it won't matter. Whether they ask for a diplomatic envoy or a battle fleet, if Earth commits to helping, we commit fully. That's what makes us different from everyone else in this galaxy. On Earth, in the halls of government, new treaties were being drafted. The Terran Collective Defense Agreement, inspired by the treaty, was already attracting interest from 30 species. Some were peaceful traders seeking protection. Others were small nations tired of being bullied by larger neighbors. All of them had seen what happened when humanity said it would defend an ally. The galaxy was changing, reshaped by the presence of a species that refused to accept the old rules. Humanity had arrived in galactic society not as conquerors or traders, but as protectors. And the message was clear. Threaten Earth's friends, and you would face consequences that no one in the galaxy was prepared for. In the home system, War leader presented his report to the high command. The shame of his defeat burned, but he spoke truthfully about what he had witnessed. The humans are not like other species, concluded. They do not fight for honor or glory. They fight to win, and they have perfected the art of winning over thousands of years. My recommendation is that the Dominion avoid any conflict with Earth or its allies. We are warriors, but they are something else entirely. They are survivors who became soldiers, and that makes them more dangerous than any warrior species could ever be. The High Command accepted his recommendation. They would not seek revenge or renewed conflict with humanity. Some lessons, even for warriors, only needed to be learned once. And across the galaxy, species large and small began to understand a new reality. There was a new power among the stars, and it had announced itself not through diplomacy or trade, but through overwhelming military action in defense of an ally. When humans made promises, they kept them. When humans went to war, they went to win. And when someone called humanity for backup, they should be prepared for humanity to arrive with a battle fleet. Because to humans, that's what real help looked like.